All right, so now we're live. Good evening, everyone. This is Damon with MBTV. We have the regular Daniel, and Trey is running a quick errand for me. He'll be back. And then we got Blake. Blake obviously is doing his traditional, coat and collared shirt, which we know is Blake's thing. So let it be known that Blake will permanently wear these particular things. And if you catch him without one, that'll be the day.
With no tie either.
No tie either. He's going a little more casual today, a little more casual feel. So, all right, guys. So today's topic is going to be about combining NLP with MBTI. There's going to be a lot of things to cover, so I can't obviously get into everything, but it's really diving into some of the aspects of what NLP is. As far as some of you may not know what NLP is. Some of you may have a little bit of knowledge with it. So we're going to go from kind of the beginning and then tie that back into MBTI. Daniel has a little bit of experience with NLP. I did a little bit of work with NLP with Daniel the other night. So we're going to have a little bit of insight of kind of how this works and how it ties into MBTI. So, all right. So naturally, NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, as you can see in our particular title. So you have what that is your brain subconsciously is mapping processes throughout your day. It's mapping any sensory information. And what we have are these things called meta programs. Okay, so what meta programs are ways that we're seeing the world in which we choose based on the subconscious map. So it's like mind filters. For example, if you're looking at a particular car that you want to buy, you're going to start seeing more of those cars. Or if you're thinking the world is a negative place, you're going to start seeing a lot more negativity in the world. If you think the world is optimistic and positive, you're going to see a lot of the positive in the world. And so these are all called meta programs. So what it is we all have these meta programs in place. You can't get rid of them. We're always going to be filtering out information. Can you imagine what it's like with sensory overload without being able to filter that information out? That would be nuts, right? So with meta programs, we take in information, and the information that we're taking in, whether consciously, subconsciously, or unconsciously, is being mapped through our minds. All right, so all this information is being mapped in a certain pattern through our minds. So when we understand how these blueprints are being laid down, impression after impression after impression after impression of blueprinting, we have a certain way of viewing the world. So as a child, we're seen as, we have a childlike innocence, right? This particular thing, like childlike innocence, and all of a sudden they're conditioned and hardened by the world. So the idea is that we have this perspective that somewhere along the lines we've lost our way, and we've lost that innocence, right? And some people have it, some people have. So it's really because we're following these blueprints that have been laid down by us for so long, and so many years of conditioning, we're going to feel or believe a certain thing. Well, the truth is, and it all comes from a notion that the reality is in the way that we perceive it. It's our perception. Okay, so my reality might be different than Daniel's reality, or Blake's reality, or Trey's reality, or anybody else's reality. If you spend most of your time in the introverted world, reality is going to appear almost like a reflection of that. So that is one of the areas in which I want to target today, and really tie that back into MBTI, so we can look at how NLP is actually a tool you can use for your MBTI type. So that way you can go, okay, now I understand what's going on here. Because the problem is, many of us MBTI enthusiasts, we're thinking that our type is the reason why we feel or believe or have a certain way or a certain perspective upon the world. We have this perspective because of our MBTI type. That's not true. Our MBTI type obviously is our perceived conscious focus of attention, right? So if my perception process is introverted intuition, that's what I'm naturally receiving consciously through my life. But what am I receiving unconsciously? What are my shadow functions playing a role into my personality? How are they laying blueprints down into my personality in the way that I see and feel about the world? So when you start challenging aspects of my particular worldview, you'll find that it comes from TI roots, it comes from SI roots, it comes from NE roots, it comes from the unconscious function roots. A lot of the unconscious blueprints that are there, right? Maybe it's a cataclysm of a bunch of different things, of my NE being paranoid, or maybe it's the logical deduction levels that I've constructed, in which I feel that the world is actually what comprises the world, and it's given me more of a cynical worldview. Or maybe you've seen a particular perspective where the world is in this dark light, or that I feel like the pattern, that this concrete pattern, this concrete archetype of what an evil person is is what people are fulfilling. So I'm using SI in a negative way, right? Or maybe I'm using FE in a negative way. So a lot of these shadow functions are playing a role in laying the blueprint for your MBTI type. So if we started understanding how these two things are really coming into play, we start understanding a full spectrum of why you may believe what you believe, and it goes way, way just beyond just your regular MBTI type. So that's what today's talk is going to be about. Obviously, I don't want to get into too much data, but as you can tell, this is a subject I'm very, very passionate about, a subject I'm very, very thrilled about releasing to you guys. It's been in the works for a long period of time. I've just finished my Master Practitioner course in NLP, so that gives me the ability to be able to look at MBTI and NLP and go, okay, now I can see the full picture of what's going on in the psychological spectrum as far as what your type preferences are and what your subconscious blueprints are and how you've actually conditioned this particular worldview, whether it's pessimistic or cynical or negative or whatever you may want to challenge, or maybe you're creating self-sabotage within yourself. So as you know, we position a coaching platform here, and our coaching platform is designed to help identify those things and help you work past it. We don't heal the sick. We just we remove the obstacles from you achieving whatever it may be. So if you think that you can't be extroverted because you prefer introversion, that's not the case. If you think that you're a shy extrovert and you're stuck in introversion and you can't get out because you're shy, that's what NLP does. It breaks those patterns. If you're standing in your own way, or you're obstructing yourself, or you're having a bad day or a bad impression or whatever it may be, you're overreacting to stress, that's where these subconscious patterns are playing a role. I see a snake, I have a phobia, oh my God, I freak out. That kind of thing, those are those patterns that you create. It's like a response stimulus, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's dive into detail. I'm going to let Daniel share a little bit of his experience with NLP, and then we're going to go from there.
Yeah, so my experience has been pretty cool. I've done research in NLP for a very long time, and so getting to know MBTI on a very deep level, getting to know Enneagram, and kind of seeing how this all comes together. Like I remember one day Damon just out of nowhere was like, "Oh my God, I see the whole picture between all of these typologies." I actually had a different upbringing with NLP. I did most of my research for the area of dating and relationships, and in the world of dating, pretty much, and pursuing women, and just kind of growing on myself, growing on my frame. My mental image of myself, my mindsets, right, and adopting certain mindsets and methodologies with clients. And it's a very powerful tool. I can tell you that, from time to time, some people just get stuck in like one mode, and they're just so used to and being conditioned to one mode of thinking that you slowly start to integrate a different way of thinking. And then people they just switch. It's weird. Like, you think that repetition doesn't do something, and then it just kind of, it sinks into to people over time. And so the idea is that what we're going to be talking about in this video is going to be personal growth driven, in that we're really hoping that people use the power of typology for the better good of yourself and for the people around you, right? And to affect people in a positive and proactive way. And, when I refer to using it in dating relationships, a lot of the clients I work with, especially guys, they have like these really bad associations of life directed towards women, or women directed towards men. And so there's a lot of debunking these associations and this conditioning, from upbringing through just how you are, just how you carry yourself throughout life. Like me and Damon were talking about earlier this week, you receive so much information, every second, and that it's almost like a revolving door, but you get to choose how much of that information stays in that revolving door, right? And that, you can create better cycles, or better ways of living, a better lifestyle, by adopting new changes, every day. It's kind of regimental, right? Like, you want to be able to create the lifestyle you want. That's kind of how MBTV formed in a sense, is that we really want to change people's lives and really share information so that people can just kind of integrate what really works for them in their life in the way that fits them the best. So that's all I have to say about that. I have a bunch of questions, by the way, Damon, that I wrote out for you, because obviously more than me. You're a practitioner in NLP. So whenever you want to get to these questions, I know you want to get to a lot in this video.
Yeah. So guys, we're going to start. I'm going to give you some very serious basics to NLP, so you guys understand what it is and what it isn't. And then once you get that concept, you start understanding, okay, this is what it is, instead of saying, okay, it's a way of manipulation. There's no such thing as far as good and bad or manipulative or not manipulative, depending on the user, right? So if we look at a gun, is a gun a good thing or is a gun a bad thing, right? In itself, it can be used depending on who the user is. You can use tools of manipulation by using NLP, but you can also use NLP to fix things. You can use NLP to repair yourself. You can use NLP to move forward in life. So it's depending on how you use it. So from that point of view, let's kind of go into being more aware of your environment. So a lot of the stuff in NLP is based on sensory acuity, being aware of things. What I'm going to cover today, more importantly, is 12 particular ways that you're going to be aware of your surroundings. And some of these ways you're going to identify as what is going on here. I have no idea that I could actually do this in 12 different ways. But first, we're going to go into the regular modalities, okay? So modalities are basically or representational systems. This is another word for your modalities. Your representational systems are going to be your visual, audio, and auditory, and your kinesthetic. And these three things are the way that you're actually, the primary ways in which we're feeling things, experiencing things, whether it's visual, feeling based in our bodies or outside of our bodies, and auditory, right? This is how we recall a lot of memories. And this is how a lot of our maps are written into our mind. There's a few maps that we're going to be harder to recall, like smells and taste. So I'm not going to really have to worry about that unless you're an SI user. Those things will probably be a little bit easier for you to recall. But the visual, auditory, and the kinesthetic ones that are big, and most people have a primary modality or primary representational system to the mind selects how they're going to visualize the particular experience in life. What I have not noticed is any particular correlation between types as far as what representational system is more common. Maybe with time I'll find a little more of a correlation, but I find that this is individual preference. Okay, so we've got these three primary systems. All right, so when we consider that and we break this down into each system having two different ways, two different modes, right? We have internal and external. Okay, so we have an internal kinesthetic feeling and an external kinesthetic feeling. And so now we're breaking these modalities down into more components. So 3 now becomes, each one doubles. So now we got 6 systems, right? Then you're going to double it again. So we got to remember, this is how our mind is mapping all this information, and some of them are going to stand out more than others. So we're going to cover I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'm going to get you an idea of how this actually works out so that you guys are aware of what's going on. The last level is your broad versus narrow. Okay, so to get an idea of what this is, when you guys recall, our society conditions us in a way to associate positive emotion with a broad modality, okay? A very broad modality. When you feel wonderful, where do you feel it in your body? It's all over the place, kind of. It's not like wonderful is a very specific location, right? It's broad. It's like all over the place. But when you feel pain, it's very specific. That's called narrow, okay? So we have a broad kinesthetic awareness that's associated with positive emotion, and we have a narrow one that's associated with negative emotion. This is actually a subconscious blueprint. You can actually feel wonderful in a very specific place. Okay, but this is the way that we've laid down, and our society has conditioned us to believe a certain thing or to move in this certain different direction. We've never really paid attention to this particular thing. So the 12 states of attention, this is what it is. Being aware of what state of attention. And in fact, if you concentrate on one state of attention for a period of time, you can almost clear your stressor plate almost immediately. If you have a stressor that's completely stressing you out and you focus on something outside and external, then you automatically can start feeling completely different because of that sensory awareness. It also gives you a brand new perspective. So you have the sensory awareness outside of yourself being external, and then you're aware of something else, which is, wow, my mind is completely 100% focused on this. So you have your visual, internal, narrow, visual, internal, broad. Those are both internal, right? So when you visualize something internally, what are you seeing? You're seeing your mind maps, recalling an experience or seeing the future, whatever it may be. Those are internal visuals. You can see those closing your eyes. Your external, on the other hand, you see those by looking out what's around you. Auditory, good example in auditory external modality per se is the cocktail party thing, right? If you do broad, you can kind of hear the whole party. But if you do narrow, you can select a particular group and you can actually listen in on that very particular group, and you can kind of filter out the other noise, right? This is called the auditory external narrow band, essentially is what it is. and then you can expand it back to broad. But you have conscious control of what you can be, what you're aware of at any given time. So if you can actually play with this by going to a certain external event outside of yourself and isolating certain noises, even in your room. By hearing the ceiling fan, I'm narrowing out. Then all of a sudden I can expand and hear everything that's going on in my entire household, including outside. If there's dogs barking, I can expand beyond that. Then I can narrow in again. This is you being strengthening these states of attention. When you get stronger with this, you're building something that Tony Robbins calls the mind muscle, right? The mind muscle is getting stronger. It's getting more effective. It's becoming a more powerful tool for you to use. Instead of life being the bully and kind of pushing your mind to convince you and to make you feel a certain way, or make you feel that you have to be inferior, or feel that you're superior, or even superior, or feel arrogant or not arrogant or confident or underconfident. Life is telling you what you should do unconsciously. When you start learning and you're becoming aware of what's going on around you, all of a sudden you start conditioning your mind on your choice of what you want to feel. You can choose how your mind is starting to map patterns in your own brain. You're starting to become aware of this. The mind's actually getting a sense of strength and confidence. That way you're actually learning to how to control your own mind map. Blake will talk to you a lot about this sometime in the future, but Blake and I are on the exact same page. Everything you listen to and expose yourself to without this conscious control and conscious awareness of what senses you're paying attention to, everything you're inputting is having an effect on you, okay? Whether it's music, whether it's visuals, whether it's exposure, whether it's violence, whether it's peace, something or everything is having some kind of imprint, and it's laying down some type of blueprint on you. Blake, do you want to add to that for a moment?
Yeah, it's just like whether you like it or not. I mean, I was in the YMCA talking to some kids one time. They're listening to some very violent, explicit rap music, and I was like, "Man, you seem like a pretty upstanding, intelligent, good kid. You're listening to this." He's like, "Man, I'm not gonna let it affect me. I'm not gonna let it, have an impact on me." I'm like, "Dude, it will. It will manifest itself in some area of your life if you consume it." It's like, "Nah, I'm not gonna let it affect me." I'm like, all right, man, we'll see about that. And, it's affected me, honestly. So, whenever I go and work out, I don't like to listen to classical, slow stuff. I like that high intensity stuff because I know that it's going to cue me to work harder. And that applies for other activities too. I learned to actually utilize the stuff that I consume to my advantage. Music is an example.
Right. Daniel, would you mind sharing an experience where something that has had a subconscious impact on you? And you weren't aware of it until way later, and you're like, oh, crap, I shouldn't have listened to that, or I shouldn't have exposed myself to that.
Yeah, all day. For me personally, everyone's going to have their own taste in music, right? Everybody kind of operates on a different kind of frequency, if you will, or beats per minute or whatever, you know what I mean, however you want to coin it. I'm very into music, and so what I really like to enjoy doing is I like to understand my awareness with music, how much I associate with music and how I do associate with music. And I've noticed that for Blake, for me, how I integrate music in my life is actually, it's boiled down to a science. And so I understand what kind of music I need to listen to for different activities, whether it's, listening to fast-paced music for reading. Believe it or not, I listen to electric music to read. I listen to classical music when I work out, and I listen to, something really slow beat for meditation. When I'm, I always have to have something going on in my mind to keep me, stimulated for different activities. And so, yeah, binaural beats, shout out to binaural beats. So I'm actually very, I teach meditation, or I used to, and maybe I will instigate that. But, I use binaural beats a lot in my practice. So I am very into anchors, physical, sensual anchors in my environment to help me do the things that I need to do. And so as far as music is concerned, there's other things too. I'm always trying to be aware of the different anchors in my life that set myself up for maybe a function loop or a cycle that I don't necessarily want, or that I do want. A good example of this is if I don't wake up to motivational music, my day isn't going to be as inspiring, right? Not being able to listen to somebody motivating me or having some kind of motivational visual in my mind is going to not motivate me or inspire me as much throughout my day. Not only that, but like what you do throughout your day, right? Is you have to see things almost as if it's like a plus or minus, right? And you have to think about this. And I've broken it down for myself in that way because every action you take is either a plus, a positive experience, or a minus, a negative experience. And this comes to the people in your life, the food that you eat, the activities that you do, and the decisions you make. And you have your own moral obligation to do these things. To kind of navigate your life in the way that you want, to create the ultimate lifestyle for yourself. And so we're all kind of competing against ourselves to create what we really want to manifest. We are the architects of our life, but if we don't sit in front of like the information highway or the filtration area of our where physical out of body experience in your environment meets your internal experience, you're not sitting at that line filtering out your experiences, you're just letting everything kind of just come in and soak in, then you're not taking control of your life. You're not taking that responsibility to create the life for yourself. And so, my life's kind of mission on the side is to always recognize what's going on in my life and to understand all the little intricacies, all the little things going underneath the hood, and being aware of what's coming in and out of my life. So I'm going to stop there.
Perfect. Okay, so Trey, would you share your experience with not just let's say subconscious impressions made and some patterns you may have formed due to things that you subconsciously or consciously exposed yourself to and didn't realize it until later?
Yeah, I remember actually there was a point in time where there were certain people that I would hang around that I was like, man, I see that they do this and I don't want to do that at all. Like, I don't want that to be a part of my behavior. And I thought that it wasn't going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that over time, like, I wouldn't do anything like that. I wouldn't do what they were doing, their patterns and behaviors. I didn't ever, I consciously thought about it. Like, this isn't just going to seep in. And over time, it really did. And I think that that really ties back into like what a lot of people say when it comes to, what is it? Like, there's a saying, Blake knows this saying. It's something like, you're only like half as good as your friends or something like that.
You're the average of the 5 people that you hang around. Your network is your net worth.
The law of averages.
So that would be that's a big part of it. It's not necessarily like we're talking about different avenues. We've got music and we've got all kinds of different things around us, and I think that they all play a big effect on our personality, on our patterns and behaviors. Actually, I mean, I don't really know if it ties into personality because what defines personality, but one big thing that I think we all have to be aware of is what parts of the world we're letting in on our life. Because there's going to be like all kinds of things that you may love about the world, may hate about the world. And if you expose yourself to a lot of the negative things that you don't want to be a part of your life, they're going to become a big part of your life. They're going to become a pattern in your behavior in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, I'm not saying that you can't be impervious to that and you can't be around people like that and not pick it up. I mean, you can, but it's really likely that it's going to become some kind of, at least the violence of whatever it is, or maybe it's not violence or whatever, I don't know, but maybe a specific part of it may show up in your personality at some point. So it's really important to make sure that you are really strict on what you let around you, I guess.
You want to have like a gatekeeper, at the gate of your mind.
You are the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Or you are the gatekeeper. But I don't know how the saying goes, something like that.
Yeah, so what the key is here is NLP gives the subject and access to actually get that ability to be able to become the better gatekeeper of their own mind. You're never going to be able to limit all your subconscious impressions, but awareness is the key. Once you have awareness, you can start realizing what is having an effect on you and what isn't. When you pay attention to these 12 states of attention, you're going to start recognizing that awareness, and you're going to go, okay, I see what's going on here, right? I can see this particular thing. I can see that this is having an effect on me. I can start being aware of how this is affecting me. Now, instead of pain being generalized, I feel depressed. What part of you feels depressed? What part? Is it your arm, your chest? Where do you feel that depression at in your body? What part of your body is being afflicted by this particular pain? And yes, you can do this. You can isolate and locate locations of feeling in your body if you actually pay attention to where you feel it. Many times in my life, I felt anxious and stressed and whatever else. And I can tell you where I feel my anxiousness or my anxiety. I can feel it right in this region here, chest, from solar plexus up to throat. And it's a very narrow like band. It feels like it's constricting. And everybody's going to be a little bit different. That's where my anxiety tends to rest, is this constricting like feeling. What do you think created that feeling? Why is that feeling there? What is it happening there? And it's because of a subconscious map that has created that feeling to A, locate there, and B, maybe some kind of trauma that has caused that feeling to locate there. So when we tie this back to MBTI, and when we tie it back to the things that we start seeing, okay, now I'm aware of what's going on. Now I'm going to tie my conscious perception function, right? My conscious perception function is now allowing a particular perspective being withdrawn from this example. So if I use NI as a particular perception function, that is where my conscious perception is focused. Okay, so what would NI look like? What do you think NI tends to favor? For me, I'm a visual person. I see everything visual. I use visual internal a lot and visual external a lot. I'm pretty aware of what's going on. I use both narrow and broad bands as far as my focus of attention, right? So my visual is where I have most of my insights. Auditory is terrible, but I'm aware of it. I can't even remember lyrics to songs. Like, my auditory is so awful that I literally, I think it was Janelle that asked me to recite some nursery rhyme, and I couldn't remember the words. I have no idea what these things are. I mean, if I heard it, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's that song, but I wouldn't know the lyrics if I tried. So for those of you who love music and know every song, I admire you, because I honestly cannot do that. Okay, I struggle with auditory recall pretty bad. But what I can say is that by being aware of these particular things, you can see what information is getting in your head. So some of the people have always wondered why I'm so healthy. It's because I haven't listened to today's horrible music. I'm just kidding. But I've had a lot of people ask, like, how are you so psychologically healthy given your past? That was my answer. I was like, I honestly can't hear lyrics. So probably it's helped influence me in a positive direction, considering all the horrible music that's out there. I have been able to escape that paradigm. All right, so but back to seriousness. Ultimately, I have recognized that a particular aspect of each function is releasing a certain particular piece of information to you. And consciously, you can use this perception function to start identifying what is going on with this particular piece of music or piece of visual information, or even this kinesthetic information. So everybody should be aware of these 12 states of attention, both on internal, external, narrow, and broad, and auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. And we can understand how those combine to create a sensory experience. See, what's interesting is, the hardest one, I think, is auditory, internal, and broad. Okay, because auditory, internal, narrow is when you hear that voice in your head. It's telling you, I'm a failure, I'm a piece, or whatever, whatever that voice is telling you. That's auditory, internal, narrow. Auditory, internal, broad is like hitting a spiritual state of attention. It's very, very difficult for people who do not know how to meditate effectively. It's also very difficult for people who to do naturally. So when you do binaural beats, it tends to activate that ability to be able to listen to more of your own internal broad, not the binaural beat itself. That's external. That's outside of yourself. The internal broad is almost like a white noise in your own mind. And if you can hear that, it's almost like it's outside of the voice talking. And when you recognize this, and this gets into this spiritual conversation, I see Daniel smiling. He wants to jump in on something. But when you get into the spiritual side, you start recognizing I am the identity outside of the thoughts. I am not associated with this thought. So when you get into meditation, you can start seeing these thoughts pass through, and you're not attached to these thoughts anymore, because a lot of people have associated themselves with the thinker, right? I am the thinker. I am that which I speak, or my thoughts. I am my thoughts, right? I think, therefore I am. Well, that's not exactly true. We are outside of that. So who's actually observing the thoughts is the real you, the spiritual you, the true you. So I'm going to let Daniel talk about this for a few moments and really dive into this, and then we'll get back to the MBTI connection.
What are we talking about? Spirituality, who we are?
Whatever comes to mind, Daniel, whatever comes to mind. What were you smiling about?
So somebody was just asking me how I can listen to music in the morning. If I could, I would have a theme song follow me 24/7. But on this topic, Blake's like, yes. The spirituality aspect of NLP and MBTI, I always say this to everybody I meet, whether it's clients, these hooligans that I work with 24/7, people I meet on the street, strangers, people on YouTube comments, and people I help, pro bono. Like, your life is a mindset game. You're just always fighting yourself. And you have to remember, whether you're looking at MBTI or Enneagram or NLP or whatever methodology or model you're adopting or integrating into your lifestyle, it's a mindset game. It's a personal journey, and you're walking on this path, going over hurdles, having people unexpectedly meet you at crossroads, whether it's romantically or for a bad reason. And you always have to remember that, you're always in charge of and responsible of the decisions you make, I believe that there's a huge spiritual undertone of someone's lifestyle, not in a religious sense, but in just a very personal, growth-oriented spiritual sense. And what I mean by this is that, we have all these different centers, not just mindfully, but you have a heart center, and you have, a thought center, right? And you have a vocal center, and you have all these different centers that, between the senses and, the way that you carry yourself through your life through these different centers, you have to be conscientious of all these things, and you have to, realign yourself and adjust to the way that you live in your life, and I'm very receptive to sound, because that's how I grown to condition myself. That's how I am able to effectively navigate through my life with music. When I don't have music, I'm pretty much no use to myself. And I've used binaural beats, and I use music for different, all different aspects of my life. I have people in my life for particular reasons, and I grow with people in particular ways. And all these people are, they're all varied. I'm going to have a different relationship I have with Blake than I do with Trey, than I do with Damon, than I do with a girlfriend or a best friend. And so the idea is that, you could be who you are, right? Damon was talking about who are you outside of, your name. Like, say your name's Blake. Am I Blake, or am I someone more than that? Am I more than just this person in this flesh and body, right? And you have to see this in a perspective of, are you living within the duality of life, or are you seeing life outside of the mirror? Are you seeing not only the mirror, that everything is just a direct experience for you, but you're beyond that. You're pretty much behind the window. You are just kind of you're just here for the ride, and you're learning and you're experiencing, and you're just becoming the architect. And I know I'm going in a whole bunch of different different places right now, but how this kind of all connects to NLP, it's kind of mapping out and really resonating with how you are, and accepting accepting the 360 or the 100% of who you are, the parts of you that you want to grow and direct yourself in a different direction, overcoming your conditioning and, your past experiences through replacement, and displacing those negative experiences and conditioning with positive ones, and learning how to do that. And you can do that with NLP. And you just slowly start to revolve, the crap that you don't want in your life with things that you do want in your life. I've used music. I've used, people. I've used different kinds of anchors, which Damon will be talking more about. But there's one topic I do want to leave off of, is that with a lot of clients and people that I know that really struggle with changing their life for the better, there's this one exercise that I tell people to do. And all you do is you take a piece of paper, hopefully like you get like a bigger piece of paper besides like 11 by whatever inch piece of paper. You get like a bigger piece of paper, right? And you just you just outline a square, and within this square you write everything in your life: your friends, your family, how you are presently, your mood, your job, anything positive and negative. And next to each thing in this box, you, aside from every category or whatever is in your life, you write a positive or a negative, right? You can rank them 1 to 3. Like, you can rank boyfriend and girlfriend, positive, positive. So it's a 2 out of 3 positive, right? And so the idea is you start to see and map out everything in your life, and it can be rearranged. It doesn't have to have a specific kind of linearness in this box, but this box is supposed to represent your life. And so what I love to do with clients is say, all right, you have like about 80 things in this box. You know, your mom's a negative, or your work's a positive and you love your job, but the guy down the street's a negative and he's always in your life somehow. And, you know, you're kind of depressed sometimes, so you put depression in the box. And you have, you know, some hobbies you like to do. And the idea is you really want to start to visually and start connecting with your life in a very sensory way that involves you participating in a very visual or other sensory driven experience with how you're navigating through your life. And so imagine this exercise, you're seeing 80 to 100 things in this big box of your life. Now, the idea behind it is when you're done, you should be able to think to yourself, wow, I'm in control of what comes in and out of my life, right? That square represents your power, right? That box is your life, and you have the control to bring people in and out of it, to bring situations in and out of your life, right? Sure, there requires a strategy, but you have to remember that sometimes visually seeing how to control your life, or maybe different ways or approaches, maybe visualizing the control of your life may not be sufficient. Maybe you'd rather hear how to control your life, and you can kind of create unique different situations to do that. There's tons of different ways on how to see how you can control your life with what sensory experience works best for you. But visual experiencing how to control your life always works for a lot of people, because people really get to see how either messed up their life is and that they just need to rearrange everything. You know, you can change your life as in little to like 1 to 2 days to 2 weeks, right? And to create different habits within 3 to 4 weeks and have them stick. And so the idea is the power is in your court, whether or not you want to own up to that responsibility and freedom, right? You know, it's kind of 2 different ways of seeing it. You know, the freedom of taking control of your life is one thing, but submitting to life situations is another. So that's all I have to say about that.
All right. So, So that's a really good introduction to what I'm getting into about right now is obviously, yeah, we want to talk about the particular technique I want you guys to understand is obviously I've looked at some of the comments while Daniel was talking. I see a lot of timeline therapy. What we don't want to do is throw out a bunch of random techniques and really not understand a lot of principles of what's going on here. So I talked about perception, the way that you're seeing a certain thing, or the way that you're feeling a certain thing, or the way that you're taking in a certain piece of information. You're going to attach a perception to that particular stimulus. Okay, what is raw reality without perception? Does it exist at all? I don't know. I am not this kind of scientist to be able to say this. I have no freaking clue. But I do know that reality is what we attach our perception to. That's how we experience reality. What reality is without that raw reality, we don't know. But that being said, when we attach our perception to these things, that perception has some kind of blueprint attached to it. It's adding to some kind of meta program that you already have established. So what we need to recognize is that everything in our life that we've attached these particular meanings to, they have these properties called submodalities. Okay, so we understand the 12 states of attention. What we now need to recognize is the submodalities of these 12 states of attention. Okay, what submodalities are essentially the properties of each perception attached to each thing that's going on through your mind, the visual, the auditory, or the kinesthetic feeling, right? Submodalities is essentially the way that you're experiencing that particular thing. So if you have a visual memory, what you can do is you can recall a particular memory that, let's do a little drill. If everybody's willing to do this, if you're willing to do this, just type, you know what, I'm just going to go on with it. I'm not going to really look at all the comments, but just if you're willing to do this, you can do this right now. Is we're going to do a little drill, and it's very simple. And all you're going to do is recall something that was slightly stressful, not incredibly stressful where you start having convulsions, where we don't want that going on, but just recall something slightly stressful. What you're going to feel is something going on in your body if you can recall it successfully. What you want to do is put your mind in that position, see what you saw, hear what you heard, and then feel what you felt during that experience. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to do that. When you do that, when you've got that kind of down, you should start feeling it effectively. You might recall the experience. You might start thinking of things. Keep your mind on it. and put yourself in that, okay, I start to feel the stress. What you need to do is you want to identify the properties of what you're seeing. Is it black and white? Is it in color? Is it big? Is it small? Is it framed? Where is that picture in your mind? Is it all over the place? Is it one small area? Is it big? Is it, and if it's a kinesthetic thing, if you feel it in your body, where is it at? Is it big? Is it across your body? Or is it narrow? Is it what color is it? What does it feel like? What shape is it? How deep is it? You can start identifying where these submodalities, the properties, it's not what it is you feel, it's how you're experiencing it. The key word here is how. And if you start identifying these properties, you have control over the properties of the experience, and now you can start changing it. Okay, but if you're not aware of how it's affecting you, you really can't change it. It's kind of being unaware of what's going on around you. It's the same thing of what's going on in you, right? So how are you experiencing these particular stressful events? So once you've got that, I want you to take it, if it's a visual experience, and all you have to do is just change a property of it, okay? If it's full color and it's really bothering you, change it to black and white. Zoom out, dissociate from it. What that means is if you're seeing it from your own eyes, pull yourself out of your own body and zoom out. Okay, so this is really, really basic NLP work, and all you're doing is changing the properties of how you attach that experience of that perception in your own life, right? That you're just changing properties. So go ahead and do that. If you guys are starting to feel how it changes the effect it has on you, automatically, you can start having control over it, okay? Obviously, we're not programming anything. I'm just allowing you to mess with the submodalities of these particular things so you guys can see what kind of effect it has on this. So yeah, you can do all kinds of things from different experiences, okay? So the key here is to understand how these perception things are automatically being perceived as you're taking this experience in full color. And if it's a kinesthetic feeling, you're taking in it like a knife, or somebody betrayed you or something. And it feels like some kind of stabbing sensation, where you can change that. You're now allowing it to affect you in a different way. If it's black and white, or if it's dissociated, if it's a visual stimulus, you can start altering how those things affect you. And so again, the reality is what perception we attach to it. Okay, so that's why obviously that particular stimulus happened, but we can now start changing our own reactions to those things by being aware of what it is. So to tie this back ultimately to MBTI, which, Blake obviously wants to draw it back, probably ground it back to earth and saying, what's going on here? Okay, so to tie this back to your MBTI type, again, when you're seeing something or making a judgment, think of where those judgments are coming from. Okay, if you're making a judgment that ESTPs are all a certain way, or that people are evil, or people are whatever, or I'm a victim. Let's say that you feel like everybody's targeting you, or if you're some type of particular thing that may be a stigma of your type. For example, INFPs are the most passive people on earth. Okay. And if you feel like you're a pushover and you prefer INFP, you might just go, you know what? I'm an INFP and that's why I do what I do. That's not the case. That's a stereotype. That's a profile. Anywhere in official MBTI material, you're not actually a passive pushover. Okay. So some of the things, we're going to get into Daniel's questions in a little bit, but I'm going to talk more about this INFP thing. So let's go into detail about this. So if a particular INFP or ISFP is in this position, and this can be relative to any type, INTJs hate people. It could be any type, any stereotype associated with type. When you read that information, what metaprogram do you think you put up? Okay, so if you identify with INTJ, what metaprogram do you think has automatically come up? Oh, it gives me a reason to justify my behavior. It gives me a reason to see other people that who treat people like crap. They might be ISTJ or INTJ. I now am justified to treat people like crap, or I'm justified to do this. And we'll start putting up metaprograms. What that metaprogram is dependent on your own subjective experience of reality. Okay, so what metaprograms are you putting up? What information are you filtering in? What are you allowing to continue to build a blueprint, right? So when you start associating with a type, you're going to start associating with the characteristics that you've read or experienced about that type. Now, naturally, you may subconsciously reject a type, but that's the type you're closest to. And you're going to naturally put up other metaprograms like, that's not me. I must not be that type. Okay, I'm going to look at another type. Or maybe you don't even want to settle on a type because you felt your whole life that you're not unique enough, like an Enneagram 4, and you want to be so different that you don't want to be put into a box. Whatever the case, you're going to put up some meta program with whatever new information that you align with or associate with. Okay, so the key is to understand how this is having an effect on you. The key is to understand what functions you're putting forth. Now, function theory, like I said, it's theory. There's a lot of aspects to it that I think are very, very practical, but ultimately it's theory. But from a functional standpoint, we can root back and go, okay, let's look at the ESTJ archetype. I'm going to bring Blake back to the conversation. All right, so the ESTJ archetype. So we've got a person who leads with TE. We've got a person who uses SI as a way of perceiving the world, preferably over extroverted intuition, which is their tertiary function. So when it comes to the balance of these two functions, this person's going to root on an archetype that's based off of SI, which means concrete archetypes, which probably have worked in the past. For example, I know how to manufacture the perfect business. Let's say that I prefer ESTJ, or Blake prefers ESTJ. He goes, I know the perfect method to marketing. Whatever the case, he has some concrete archetype that's in existence. And so he has this particular perception of what actually is going to work in reality. Now, the thing is, so he's going to be judging information off of what? He's going to judge it off of his SI archetype. Now, people might tell Blake, hey, Blake, you're too rigid. You may not be open to flexibility. You're not intuitive enough. You don't understand that I am in cloud 9 and I wish you could relate to me more. Whatever the case Blake may experience in life, he's got this filter of information coming from SI. So ultimately, Blake can make a choice. He can go, you know what? I think I want to really tap into my extroverted intuition more and to develop this function. Or Blake can go, you know what? I don't really value extroverted intuition. Whatever the case, he can see what programs he's putting up and he can react and respond to them effectively. He can now understand he's coming to a judgment based off an SI archetype. Now, you can do that just with MBTI, but the key is, how do you change it? How do you control it? How do you actually make modification to it? Because we talked about this last time. Last Sunday, we talked about how specifically, once you know your MBTI type, it's like, where do you go from here? And everybody's in this la-la land, right? They're like, okay, I got my type. I'm going to hang out on MBTV Slack room, and we're going to talk crap all day because we got our types. We're cool, right? So the key is, what do you do from there? Once you have your type, how do you actually use it as a tool to help develop you? How do you use it as a tool to encourage your own development? How do you guys use it as a tool to advance forward? NLP is one of the most powerful tools you can use when you've already identified your natural preferences. I favor concrete archetypes. So if I get somebody giving me too much intuitive information, I'm going to fall asleep. That's a blueprint. Okay? That's a blueprint that's crafted by a natural ST preference or SF preference. Okay? So it's understanding that these things, now you can modify how your interaction with other people can come into fruition. You can modify your interactions with other people, enhance your relationships, improve your perspective. You'll always be that natural type, but this is where I could talk about stretching and flexing and changing those blueprints and becoming a more wholesome human being. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to let Blake take over because he unmuted his mic, which means he probably has something to say. So let's hear it.
I just wanted you to hear my giggles every time he said something funny. Anyways, but yeah, back to what you said about STs falling asleep whenever an intuitive's going on their usual rant. I mean, like, I would just, if I was having trouble sleeping, I'd just pull up one of Trey's videos from his old channel and, you know, put that in my ears and I'd be fast asleep, I'll tell you what. But I actually figured out, I learned about NLP before MBTI, before Trey showed me MBTI back a year ago. And thought it was pretty interesting. It actually got me, it's what got me interested in stuff that had to do with basically mind mastery, self-awareness, you could just call it that. And I didn't look too much into it. I just knew Tony Robbins used it to do some pretty cool things and some stuff that kind of seemed unreal. Like he helped somebody with a very profound mental block, such as Tourette's, overcome it. And that was totally unbelievable. Whenever I saw that video, him using NLP to, is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong. He used NLP to destroy that.
Yes, he had a stuttering problem.
Right. yeah, he had a stuttering problem, and he got to the root of the issue, which was from his childhood. And I'm not going to go into it. Trey will probably in one of his videos if he hasn't already. But basically, something happened in his childhood that made him stutter. And so once he figured that out and he attacked it, he stopped stuttering. So that's what really got me into NLP.
Yeah, because you can really pinpoint issues and just tackle them head on. That's what I really like about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that being said, Daniel, hit me with your questions. I want to know. Oh,
okay. So hold on. I have a couple on this sidebar here. I don't know if you can accompany me, but I had some how NLP may connect to cognitive functions, preferably maybe shadow function, how to get into the doorway of the inferior into experiencing the missed out parts of life that shadow functions have to offer in a healthy way.
Okay. So let me make sure I understand your question before I attempt to answer it. So I understand your question is how can you use NLP to change the effect that shadow functions have on your psyche? Is that the question?
Correct. Sure. You can go with that.
Okay. So the key is we have to, again, our shadow functions are shaping and molding our impressions. They're not actually playing an active role into our personality as far as MBTI theory goes. So that being said, the shadow functions are unconsciously shaping our perceptions. We're not in conscious control of those things. So because of that, we're going to be laying these unconscious attachments based on the blueprints our mind lays. So I will probably at some point go into each shadow function and how NLP can modify the perception or judgment created by each function. But that's going to be a long list. I remember I did a list one time in a video. I think it was going through each Enneagram type, and it was like really long and mundane. So I'm not going to do that, but I will actually tell you that the shadow functions are pretty much out of conscious control. And so they kind of happen naturally. For example, I have role FE as according to Socionics. I don't naturally just activate it. It just happens. Like I don't go FE mode on. It doesn't happen like that. It just operates in the unconscious. And then all of a sudden I feel very worn out. I feel exhausted. I feel tired. And I'm like, okay, I don't know why I feel so exhausted. And then what I'm recognizing is that that's that FE playing a role into my personality. How is that FE making judgments is the key. How am I allowing FE to manifest itself? It has a limited scope. Well, rather it has limited energy. It has a pretty wide scope considering that I prefer extroversion overall, but it has a limited energy. So, but the question is, how is that FE forming judgments? Are those judgments, are they congruent with the way that I live, right? Are they congruent with the way that I believe? So I'm gonna pause here and I'm gonna let Trey jump in real quick. So Trey?
About what specifically?
I thought you had something to say, so.
No, sorry, I was actually in the comments or the chat. So
okay, I'm sorry. Okay, great. I misunderstood. So go ahead.
I actually had something I wanted, because you would know better than everybody here. Let's get back to the people watching this video, and I had not a question, but I guess a curiosity for the average person watching this video who really doesn't know about NLP. What are some common ways that they can either approach their own cognitive looping and resolve these tendencies, or B, approach life in a way where they can actually create their own anchors for better development?
Okay, so this is more specific. I can't really give you a general answer because there's different approaches. For example, the very common NLP technique called the swish pattern is made usually for visual swishing. Okay, so for people who are primarily visual learners, there's not all people are visual learners. Some people are kinesthetic learners. So there's also the kinesthetic swish pattern. Auditory swish, I haven't heard a lot about that. I don't know if it really even exists. And if it does, it's been done very specifically to where it's probably pretty difficult to do. But there's a kinesthetic swish and a visual swish. And both are for different types of people. There's different interventions made for different types of people. If you have a specific issue, my best recommendation is hop on Slack, join our NLP channel. And if you have a specific problem, I can probably give you an intervention right on the spot of what's probably the best approach. I can't always promise that I'll be there to be able to answer that, but I'm sure there's other people who may have some experience with NLP to be able to address those as well. So just understanding how those things, what the particular problem is and what it is. There's a thing in NLP called logical levels. And when you identify what level is actually causing your problem, you can actually pick out that level and go, that's the intervention I need to use for this particular level of problem, right? Where is the problem root? Because usually one thing I could tell you is that most people have a psychological attachment, and the behavior is just a symptom of that psychological attachment. So what happens is in modern day psychology and most therapy or intervention methods is they attack the behavior. For example, boyfriend tells girlfriend to stop talking to other guys, right? So boyfriend is like, hey, I don't like the fact that you're talking to other guys. Girls are like, the girlfriend's like, oh, well, I don't really know why I do that. I just do, but I'll try to stop. And next thing you know, she's doing it again. And so the boyfriend feels like he's violated. Oh my God, she's not listening to me. She's betraying me, whatever. And the girlfriend's like, I'm not really betraying you. I just don't know why I do. I just feel the need to do it. And this is an example of both parties having some psychological attachment in which they're not aware of. So the key is to be able to identify what that attachment is. And if you resolve that attachment, then the symptom, the behavioral symptom will dissipate. That is if you want it to dissipate. One thing that's ethical in NLP is always to check the ecology to see if the solution is actually going to enhance your life or if it's going to degrade your life. Okay. So that's checking ecology. This is why I don't like the 3-day NLP courses or the overnight NLP courses. I have been taking the same course for the last 5 months and rehearsing it, studying it, working with a practitioner and talking to them and coaching and being coached and talking about different things and going through different things. These overnight or weekend courses cannot teach you what you need to know in order to be an effective interventionist when it comes to people's problems. Okay. Just like personal training. I never trusted the guy who got the personal training cert over the weekend, right? Yeah, I just got my cert last week, bro. I took a test online. Sweet. Yeah, wicked. Now I'm trying to work out and protein drinks. You know what I'm saying? You feel me? Let's get to the gym and let's pump some heavy iron, like cool. But the point is that we want to get past that and we want to identify what the issue is so we can understand that have that core intervention and saying, okay, here's the issue that's going on. Here's the thing that's going on with this particular person. What is the proper intervention? What is the scope of these particular interventions, right? That's the key, is finding out what it is. And that's where we want to go with it. So understanding and taking time to really understand what the appropriate intervention is the best way to do it. So that being said, we want to make sure we have a full understanding of that every person is different. And so there's not a particular way to address a particular issue without understanding what the appropriate intervention is for that person. Instead of saying, oh, this is the way. Now, there are specific things that there are specific interventions for. For example, NLP is notorious for its fast phobia cure, right? So you have a quick phobia. It's for fast phobia cure. You have a phobia of something, you can pretty much get rid of it in an afternoon. Okay, and that's like, I guess they say it's, and I say they, as in a bunch of sources, say it's about 95% effective. There's very few phobias that's not able to do it. But here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. This is for response stimulus phobias. You have a stimulus, this is a response. If it's a phobia like public speaking, it's probably a process phobia. And if it's a process phobia, it has a deeper problem, which means identity issue, a behavioral issue, an environment issue, a capability issue. You got to figure out what the real deep underlying psychological attachment problem is. Again, that's the problem that people have is they try to apply these silver bullet, this magic bullet to all these problems, and it's not like that. You have to really understand that each of us are different and our subconscious maps are totally different. It's not a one size fits all type of thing. So when we look at types, which I'll probably create in the future, NLP in each type to see how each type can benefit in general from using NLP techniques that they may struggle with. For example, the ISTJ may struggle with, paralysis as far as anything changing due to the fact that they have inferior NE and they get in an NE grip and they might be like paranoid about the future.
Or touching.
Huh?
Touch, like physical touch.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother thing that, I probably could benefit from that one too. But that being said, is like, yeah, there's that paranoia with the future. INTJs, same thing, physical touch, or, in Daniel's case, whatever he may suffer with, like maybe logical arrangements. TI is his lowest function, whatever it may be.
I have a phobia though that we can use as an example that I'm okay with talking about.
All right, share, please share.
I have a phobia of loud sounds.
Okay.
And so I don't know how you'd handle that, but anytime I hear I'm in a place with loud sounds, I get like extreme anxiety.
Okay, so that is actually a very good example of what needs NLP work. Okay, because the loud sound he can't change, but his response to the loud sound he can change. Now, we've got to remember, NLP is not psychological treatment in the sense of that we understand psychology. Daniel could actually have HSP. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so this is a whole different thing. Whether it's actually HSP or not, who knows? But NLP could provide a potential solution for his particular situation. And it all just depends on his particular situation. So those are the things that we have to understand. There's a lot of trolls in the chat today. I thought this conversation would be
it's just Janelle. It's just Janelle. There's only one troll.
Okay, just making sure.
Actually, Damon, I had another question because I want this to connect with MBTI as well. Can you go a little bit into like cognitive looping and NLP and how people can, within the first 4 function, like, with like, for example, for me, or Trey going from, NI to directly to TI, like we've been mentioning and, not on video, like how would somebody be able to kind of, flip the switch and get into like, like a regular health kind of use of their functions, right?
Right.
How do you identify that? How do you know when you're able to see for yourself, oh shoot, I'm in a bad place, right? How are you able to identify with it and then get out of it, right?
Okay, so loop theory is a theory. And so I will tell you my personal interpretation of how to handle loop theory or a looping issue if you're actually having a looping issue, if it even exists in the first place, right? So loop theory is essentially, for those who don't know, is essentially if you prefer introversion, it's going to be your introverted functions. They're just going back and forth, going through a cycle. One's going to be a judging function and one's going to be a perceiving function. So essentially they can run on their own without the other 2 functions. If it's an introverted loop, you're struggling with a high level of detachment. If it's an extroverted loop, you're struggling with a loss of identity. Okay. So it's in general, of course, if we go into individual types, each loop looks different. But ultimately, yeah, you'll see this kind of change in each one. So an extroverted loop or introverted loop. Extroverts, people who prefer extroversion are going to usually be in extroverted loops. People who prefer introversion are going to usually be in introversion loops. This is not 100% all the time now. Okay, so to answer this question now is to approach a loop. The key is to target the inferior function. So if we do this in a sense of going, how is this inferior function playing a role on my particular persona? It's easier to even target the auxiliary function than it is the inferior. Either one, let me put it that way. The opposite orientation. Okay, so let's say in the case of INFJ, who's the notorious one for looping all the time, people who prefer INFJ. NITI, this is why INFJs are so logical all the time. They appear like INTJs is because they're always logical. Like INFJs are some of the most logical feelers I can think of, to the point where they're pseudo-logical. And I don't mean that in an offensive way, like, oh, INFJs aren't really logical people. I mean that in the way where they appear like they prefer logic over feeling. And so that's where there's a lot of looping in the INFJ, primarily the INFJ. Fortunately, there's not very many INFJs, so you're not going to have a lot of people looping as far as that commonality of looping. But to answer that question, FE would be the target point. Target that auxiliary function. So now we've got to think of what repressed FE. What made that INFJ actually exit the auxiliary function and go into their own mind? What was the cause of that particular thing? Okay, so if the cause was a familial relationship, whatever it may be, what we have to do in the way that you would use an NLP as an intervention for this is you would identify the experience attached with FE. So if I were to tell an INFJ who's suffering from an NITI loop that actually wanted to be fixed, not, hey, I want you to see how good you are to fix me, but I don't really want to be fixed, then that's a whole different story. But if an INFJ comes to me and goes, hey, I'd like to fix this issue, I'm really struggling with this, what do I do? My first thing I'll say, do you understand what the extroverted feeling is? And they say, yeah, I understand what it is. Okay. You understand that you're making objective judgments of human ethics and morality or whatever it may be. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You understand that. Okay. So when I put this picture, or when I say FE, does it trigger anything? Do you have a thought, extroverted feeling? What comes to your mind? Okay. What particular experiences come to your mind? In a lot of people's cases, it's their ESFJ mothers. Okay, when I say FE, they automatically picture their ESFJ mothers. And so this is where probably a lot of the FE stigma comes from. And there's probably some kind of wound that has led to that particular thing. And what you're doing is you're going to be searching for the stimulus. What has caused this retreat from FE? What has caused this reliance on the introverted world? What has caused this exit from the extroverted world, right? What has repressed this function? What are the submodalities of this function? How large is the particular life experience that has led this function to repress itself even? So these are important things to recognize when you're actually working on identifying it. And again, I can't get too specific because every case is different. There's not a specific technique or a quick fix pattern, that's going to get rid of this particular thing, because it all just depends on what caused them to leave the extroverted world. Maybe it was work stress. Maybe it was their parents. Maybe it was this, or maybe FE didn't work, or maybe they put their heart on the line and someone crushed it. Whatever the case, it's all fixable as far as, well, I can't say it's all fixable, but it's fixable for the most part as far as your own attachment to the way you're perceiving it in reality. So any comments on that, Daniel?
No, I think it's just it's interesting because most of the time it can be identified through the root cause if the person's aware of it. But the idea with NLP is, and from how we work together on some key situations, is that there's a lot of visualization, there's a lot of bringing up and kind of digging up what really happened. In my mind, I kind of see what you're talking about as switches, right? And that the switches direct somebody in the maze. And so people who create these patterns have learned to kind of overcome certain switches to kind of get out of the maze in their own way. And so the idea, though, is that you want to do it in a healthy way, right? I mean, as far as the metaphor follows. And so the idea is to kind of, it's all about identification. It's about viewing your conditioning in a visual lens. And I don't know if NLP is just directly visually oriented, or that's just a preferred route, or that there's just different routes to combat different conditionings.
No. NLP is not visually oriented. It's oriented around all the 12 areas, which I explained earlier. Your sensing route, from the extroverted sensing angle, if we were to look at all the senses, it's going to be your visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. They're all equally this NLP.
Yeah. Okay.
How we're attaching our representational systems. That's why they're called representational systems, because they're representing how we perceive reality. Okay. Okay. So for example, let's say I take my hand and I just slap you across the face, right? Just bow, just like really fast. You're going to have a perception of that event. You may think, why the hell did Damon slap me? Did I say something stupid? And then you go, I probably said something stupid. Then you may recall the experience, and then you all of a sudden may feel bad because you said something stupid. But in reality, Damon just had a muscle twitch and it just caused him to slap you. You couldn't control it. It just kind of happened. Like Blake said earlier, Tourette's or whatever.
So it's really about generating the reality in our own way. It has nothing to do with outside stimuli. It's just how we perceive it.
Attach meaning to an experience. NLP controls what you're attaching to an experience. Okay, so if there's a long-lasting experience in your life that has been having a grip on your entire life for the longest period of time, like as in my mom was extremely abusive toward me, it's going to have some type of effect on you because you have not completely released it. This is similar to EMDR, right? If you're familiar with EMDR, it's basically the eye movement desensitization, and I forgot what the other R stands for, but it's basically desensitizing or unlocking an emotional particular thing in your brain. It's unlocking that. I've done a lot of EMDR in my life as well, due to the trauma that I experienced in my youth. If someone can send me what the R stands for real quick, that'd be awesome. It's EMDR, and so I think reprogramming or something. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's like an emotion is locked up in the wiring of your brain, and by moving your eyes back and forth, you're actually accessing different portions of the brain to dislodge an emotion or something attached to an experience. Okay, so
that's crazy. It's reprocessing, by the way.
Reprocessing. Yeah, that's it. So yeah. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, I believe is what it stands for. So that would be EMDR, and it's very similar to that. With NLP, you're attaching meaning to every experience, and every experience has some type of meaning. If you see a snake and then all of a sudden you're afraid of snakes, from that, you'll hear the people, ever since I was a little girl, I was afraid of clowns or whatever, and like, what experience caused that fear of clowns? What was it? And then when you dig deep enough, you find it. Or like when Tony Robbins cured the person of the stutter. You can actually look at that video on YouTube, and you can find that the guy was watching Rocky and Bullwinkle, and you know, one of them had a stutter. I don't watch that show. I can't remember who had the stutter, but one of them had a stutter, and the stutter was actually a call for help in the particular series. And if you watch this video,
the study is the way it goes is that Bullwinkle would always cry to Rocky for help, but it was always a stuttering cry of help,
right.
and Rocky would always be there to save him.
Yeah, exactly. So this particular person adopted that because they attached that meaning to their cry for help, and so when they were in a problem, they attached it, and they stuttered for 30 years because of this one meaning. And when Tony was able to identify that meaning and to change it by bringing out the inner warrior and reprogramming the meaning of that experience, that stutter was gone. The behavior was gone because he found the psychological attachment. Okay, so that's where NLP comes into play, is to removing those particular psychological attachments, and that's what it is. So if we can understand how that plays a role, that's really where the key benefit is in saying, okay, this is the experience that I've attached. Here's the meaning that I've attached to this experience. And there's over 1,000 NLP techniques. It's crazy how many techniques are actually in NLP, because there's not one size fits all. Like I said, it all just depends on what it is that you're actually working. You know, what is it that you're working on? What is the core issue? We can always attack the behaviors on the surface, but getting to the underneath part is the key. So understanding how that attaches to your type is another thing. You know, ESTPs are notorious for drastic future outcome, right? So that's where their NI tends to erupt into their personality, drastic future outcome, right? So this is where they tend to not want to commit to anything. They have the tendency to not want to commit because their NI is naturally the inferior function. So they don't trust it as much. So because of that, they're more prone to not commit to something fully. They want to live in the moment. They don't want to have this future outcome. Now, a lot of ESTPs have passed that, but there's some ESTPs who may be stuck into that because they're more prone to that. Or there's ENTJs who are more prone to being ruthless because they're not attached to their moral sense, or they do things without any core real morality sense and just for the gain of profit or greed or whatever. You know, the INFJ who's removed from sensory reality and seeing reality as some superfluous way of looking at things or whatever. It's all just BS. And that's the key, is when we start seeing this and we identify what types are more prone to particular things, then we can start identifying the effect that it has on you. So different types are going to be attached to different things, and or they're going to have their natural downfalls. And in Blake and I's case, it's going to be that inferior FI is probably going to be one of our weak points, the areas that we make decisions on, in the sense of not being able to focus on what effect we have on people. So it's key to understand that, and it's really key to make sure that every type is prone to those things, but we can change those experiences, and we can actually move past the type stereotypes or any type that, and we can become a very more wholesome human being in general.
Okay, so I had a quick question. Would you say that people who are strong SI users, you know, they look to their past to make their decisions? Would you think that they're more prone to learn from a traumatic experience, such as like I'm a small child, and you know, a dog is coming at me and you know is chewing at my leg, and then it gets off me, and I'm scared of dogs the rest of my life? Is it more likely that I would be an SI user?
No. In general, the phobias are created by any type due to a direct experience. What's likely because of your type is any FI problem, such as you may be ruthless to people and you actually don't like it, but it just happens naturally. Then you're like, you know what? Oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. And that's going to be more of your weak point. You know, that's a natural ESTJ stereotype. Now, do you personally have that issue or not? Depends on your life circumstance. Okay. But those are going to be more type specific. But having a direct response as far as some traumatic event, that can be, anybody can be subject to that. So it's not meaning that you're SI. It's kind of, in a way, it's almost like one way, right? NLP is going to have an effect on whatever the weakness of that type is, but your type isn't going to have an effect on how NLP works within you, if that makes sense. So, Daniel, did you have something to add to that? And you're on mute, Daniel. And somebody on here told me to shut up, so I'm going to let someone else talk. So, Daniel, if you want to take it for a little bit, I'll be right back.
Sure. So I want to ask if anybody in the chat has any questions about NLP or MBTI or how any of these kind of connect with one another. So speak now or forever hold your peace. Guys in the live stream now, I want to ask you any of these questions and see if you have any ideas on them. You know, how do you see or how do you view the anchor idea in your life? Is there any way that you see that you can proactively change your life for the better and create certain systems in place as an anchor, like music maybe, or something like that, that really helps you move forward? You know, is there anything that you can see in your life, or maybe anybody in the comments, is there anything that you see that you can utilize in your life to help you kind of move forward?
You know, something pretty interesting that I would like to bring up really quick is Enneagram and the connection between NLP and Enneagram, right? Because really, if you think about it, Enneagram comes from these childhood experiences, and so NLP being all about taking an experience and recognizing in what way it affected you or what way you interpreted it, so that it affected you a certain way. That's like you can use NLP with Enneagram. There's definitely something there. And I don't know if it would be trying to remove your Enneagram type or if it would be trying to take on the entire Enneagram. I don't know what that would be, but it's definitely something to think about.
Well, how I would correlate Enneagram to NLP is right off of core fears and desires, right? How people associate with their core fears. I was just actually helping somebody today who, in a really basic situation, in a situation that no other person would find to be like worthlessness, she was like, yeah, because, you know, I felt worthless in like an everyday situation. And I'm like, that's so weird because, you know, that's so, if it's on such a basic level, what is it going to be like for you when you actually experience something really negative and you feel really, really worthless, right? And to accompany that kind of that feeling, right? And that's crazy to me. So I would want to understand how NLP can really influence proactively tackling, you know, your core fears, right? Like in the sense of, you know, the helper or the achiever, right? When you don't feel like you know, maybe Blake can chime in here, right? Like if I was kind of worked with an NLP where somebody could work with my core fears of, you know, not being useful or practical or effective, or, you know, not being able of use, you know, that would be really interesting, you know, comparatively to your core fears, Trey, or any other Enneagram type, for example. You know, it would be really interesting on how NLP can have an effect, a positive effect on core fears, and to better resonate in the better levels of health, with every type, and how maybe that, like MBTI and the cognitive functions, using tri-type and being able to effectively and healthily, like kind of correlate with the tri-type and the different kind of ways of communicating through that. And I know you know more about tri-type than I do as far as how tri-type works. But do you see there being a correlation between tri-type and NLP, and how NLP can kind of influence how the tri-type behavior comes out from somebody?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, there's like even the tri-type itself has specific fears, right? So if you look at those, like you could probably pull something out where sorry, I'm thinking about something. Yeah, for the fear, you could probably figure out a way to tackle that fear, and even then, and tackle your blind spot, because a lot of times the tri-types have their own blind spots, as well as your mission. Maybe you have something that is your specific mission for your tri-type that has been blocked off by your behavioral patterns, so you end up failing every time. Or like, because most of the time people look at their tri-type and they don't understand that like, sorry, they understand from looking at their tri-type that really their tri-type like defines what their it actually says purpose on the tri-type description, which is really cool because there's things that I find myself naturally doing that my tri-type like lines up with me and my natural actions. So I think it's interesting because my behaviors and what I'm attempting to do, a lot of times I was like, in my head, I was like being hard on myself, like, oh no, you know, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, 'cause you should be doing this. You should be doing that. And those were the external world telling me like what I need to do. You know what I mean? Like telling me that these are things you have to get done. But at the same time, like that's not necessarily what my tri-type purpose is, right? And so like these are things that I would naturally do that that I subconsciously strive for. And so what's interesting is if you consider that you're trying to do something like fulfill that mission or that purpose, and there are things or behaviors that are holding you back, you just feel like a failure in everything, because you may have things that are pulling on you saying, oh, like, give me attention over here. You need to like give me attention over here. But that main purpose that you have, you may even fail at that because of the behavioral patterns that you've got. And so with NLP, you could untangle some of those and have direct access to both and be able to maintain your life in reality, as well as your and when I say reality, I mean like the things you have to do, the things that you have to make sure that you maintain, like, you know, just regular like money and like shelter, food. And then for your actual like Enneagram purpose, and once you have, like, because of NLP, you have this tool that allows you to maintain both sides and maintain both sides of your personalities, both sides of your life. And so what that allows you to do is live on this planet and actually maintain your life while still getting energized from all those activities, instead of having to give all of your life to one thing like work. You know what I mean? And just feeling drained and sucked to death by that because you can't, because you may have had things blocking you mentally from getting that work done sooner or faster in a more efficient manner. So that's just my thoughts.
Wait, do you have any thoughts on that? On how Enneagram and NLP plays a role in your life?
Right now, they're just cool little numbers and little tools that I can't really communicate it effectively to other people or even teach people. But I definitely see, like, I'm definitely using it. Okay.
Now, when you, being a type 3, right, being the achiever, right, and I was talking about how, you know, you may be associating or conditioned in a certain way with your core fear. How do you connect with your core fears, and how do you see yourself kind of moving in a orienting yourself in a better direction, in a more proactive direction with your core fears?
One of my core fears being not being able to like use.
Yeah, like being a failure, right?
Being a failure. Man, I just make sure that as I'm reaching for the big successes, I got little successes here and there, little easy wins.
Mm-hmm.
Fuels my fire, you know.
Oh, Damon's back.
Yeah, Damon, welcome.
Popping in and out. All right, so questions that I missed.
Nothing. We were connecting Enneagram to NLP, and if you have any ideas on that, you know, that's what we were exploring.
Oh yeah, man, I could talk for another 3 hours about this, but let's make it simple. I prefer, well, I align with Enneagram 8. That is like the core essence. I pretty much, as far as I understand myself, I fit that description to a T. And everything I've ever read resonates very strongly with Enneagram 8. And the problem with it is, Trey has positioned Enneagram as a childhood wound creates the Enneagram type. I don't know about that particularly. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying I don't personally know how Enneagram comes to be. But what I can say is this: as somebody who is an Enneagram 8, I understand that every problem that I have in my life is due to vulnerability. My inability to open myself up to people, to give people information about myself, my inability to give them information that I feel would give them a one-up on me, my inability to create close relationships has always left me feeling very, very, very empty in my life. And that has created where I have such a fear of control that NLP has obviously been able to start removing those barriers for me. Obviously, it runs so deep that it's been a journey thus far, and I think it creates a lot of problems. I've experienced a lot of resistance to my own therapies as far as NLP goes. You know, I see this intervention starting to work, and my fear of even being controlled is again manifesting and kind of fighting back against the programming techniques I'm using. So I've had to go deeper and try to find that core cause. And there's a particular segment in NLP called core transformation, which has really, really helped me quite a bit. So as someone who is Enneagram 8, there is a very, very tight connection between the childhood wounds you receive as an Enneagram, the position and disposition you have as someone who prefers a certain Enneagram. And I prefer to look at Enneagram like, as Naranjo put it, you know, the neurosis, not a thing to be proud of, but a thing to look at and go, okay, this is an issue. How do we resolve this? Of course, there's healthy levels of Enneagram, average levels, and then low levels, or, you know, what do you call them? The terrible levels, poor levels. I can't remember what they're called, but they're the lowest levels of Enneagram. Unhealthy, I think they're called. Duh, right? So unhealthy, the very bottom levels, then you have your average levels, then you have your healthy levels. Well, I've always kind of fluctuated between, I've dipped down to the unhealthy for a while, in and out a little bit, but I tend to be on the high average side to the very low healthy side. So in the low healthy side, it's like when I've seen myself at my best. I can't honestly say that I've been super healthy as far as Enneagram goes, but I've noticed that NLP does naturally, as I use the techniques on myself and start working with my practitioner, that it is wedging me up on the Enneagram scale and helping. More importantly, I've noticed how it helps integrate me to 2. The more that I connect with my core self and identify the impressions that I'm having and the interpretations that I'm having that are laying an imprint on me in life, the more that I'm realizing that I'm integrating to 2. It kind of naturally moves me to 2. It's not like I have to be integrated to 2 because that's what this system says. No, it's like I feel the pull toward 2. So do I validate Enneagram theory because of what happens in myself? Absolutely. It's like after the fact, I've realized that. Like, wow, it is really pulling me toward 2. I can feel that integration. Whereas I know in my worst moments, I've disintegrated to 5. And that happened a lot more than integrating to 2 throughout my life. So I can definitely relate to the integration and disintegration portion of that. So there's so much on Enneagram. In fact, to me, it's even more correlated with NLP as far as the therapeutic intervention goes than MBTI, because MBTI has typology to understand it. They have the typology portion, which is, you know, preference pairs. Then you have the theory, and the theory is not really, it's kind of, to me, there's a lot of different mixed theories. You've got Model G now, you've got Model A, you've got Jungian regular theory, you've got MBTI theory, you've got what other crazy cognitive function theories are out there, whether they're crazy or accurate, I don't know. But there's a lot of that. So just so you guys know, that's the correlation, and that's just the beginning. There could be a lot more on NLP in the future as far as correlating it with your MBTI type and finding those weaknesses and identifying those. So if you guys have any questions, let's answer it now. Then I'm going to end this call. So go ahead and ask it right in the chat room. I'm looking right at it. And any questions that popped out, go ahead and ask it, and I'll answer it in the next few minutes. Otherwise, I'm going to end this call. So I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes to post any questions that you have regarding NLP for me or anybody else on this chat. So I'll give you guys a few minutes. In the meantime, Blake or Trey or Daniel, if you have any comments.
No, I don't think I have any comments as of right now. There was a lot of material to kind of synthesize in this call. And, I appreciate, you sharing with us the inner workings of NLP as it connects to other typologies. It's always interesting. And I believe that everybody really appreciated that in this live event.
Well, yeah, and this is one of the most excited I've been in a live event in a while because of how much I actually love NLP in general. It's just, to me, it's totally changed my perspective on life. And those people who don't really understand it, talk to me on Slack. Like, honestly, it's one of the greatest things I've been exposed to in my entire life. In fact, I would actually say it's been more impactful in my life than MBTI has been. And MBTI is obviously a big part of what I've done, and it's a big part. I believe in it. I love it. I love the theory of MBTI and how it's helped me with interpersonal communication. But the thing about NLP that's really helped me is understanding myself and being able to work on the patterns that are, flawed within myself and my own impressions and the attachment of meaning to particular things that may not necessarily mean that's a certain thing. For example, I find arrogance to be very off-putting, and I get a natural guttural anger impulse when I see arrogance. Do I have to respond that way? No, I don't. I don't have to respond that way. That's my impression. Why does arrogance irritate me so much? It really, there's certain things that I attach meaning to that I shouldn't have to, right? Or, those type of things. I shouldn't let arrogant people affect me. If you really look at it, at the end of the day, they're going to be in my life for a little bit and they're going to disappear. Why am I letting that affect my mood? Why am I letting those people steal away my happiness? Why are letting those people, live rent free in my head? Why? And then you can start realizing that's an overreaction, right? And those overreactions tend to run and control our life. So the keynote here, and before I log off this call, the keynote I want you guys to know is NLP is about taking conscious control of your life, okay? From a psychological standpoint. It's not the end all. It's not the everything to your life. It's not your life will be now magical and very fulfilling, but it will certainly be a start. If you mix that with MBTI to understand yourself, you mix that with Enneagram to understand yourself, and you mix that with spirituality to fully integrate yourself with the rest of the world, which is what spirituality is understanding your place in the world and creating a full integration between you and the rest of the world. Now you're starting to become one. That's the key, is the full integration, and getting that full integration with everything else around you. So with that being said, I'll check for questions one last time. And
there
see,
is.
Yeah,
you see the question?
I sort of have a question above, kind of, can we have a balance in the percentage of our cognitive functions? Can you elaborate on that? I need to have a little more of what that question is. Can we have a balance in the percentage of our, what do you mean percentage? Elaborate, please, and then I'll be happy. Raymond says, can you elaborate on Naranjo and his thoughts on Enneagram? Yes. Naranjo associated Enneagram with neurosis, and saying that each Enneagram type has a sense of it has a sin attached to it, a sense of an inherent human evil that's attached to it, almost like neurosis, essentially a nervous habit or some kind of trauma that each is associated with each Enneagram type. You can buy the book called Character and Neurosis by Naranjo, and you can see how actually sophisticated he's dove into each Enneagram type and kind of the things they deal with. Like it says that the 5 is associated with greed, and the 8 is associated with lust. The 1 is associated with anger, I think it is, and then the 3 is associated with vanity. The 4 is associated with I can't remember what the 4 is associated with off the top of my head. Like I said, I'm not an Enneagram expert. I wish I was, but I need to spend more time reading on it. But I can pull those up for you. So that's not an issue at all. But point is, you can see what it's associated with, and you can see how those things have an effect on that particular person's life. So we can start diving into that. Okay, so Jessica, there's cognitive functions test that shows you the percentage of each function. Jessica, to make your question very simple, let me read the rest of your question real quick. So what I wonder is if T, for example, can be used at the same level as every other function, including shadow functions, so they're used equally. Jessica, the cognitive functions test online are complete bullcrap. So that's not cognitive function theory at all. In fact, cognitive function theory is based on our natural preferences. So the key is to understand cognitive function theory, not so much as in, let me just put it blankly, this is really off topic, but I want you to understand this point in full, then I can answer this question, is our preferred functions, which is your functional stack is your, I don't know what type you are. So could you type your type real quick so I can just use your type as an example? Jessica, I'm going to wait for you. If you don't want to share it, just put I don't.
Jessica said she preferred INFJ earlier, I believe.
Okay. So if she prefers INFJ, Jessica, obviously you lead with NI. So you prefer introversion over extroversion. So your introverted functions are naturally going to have more scope because you are more comfortable with the introverted world. What scope means is the range in which those functions are used. Okay. In general, all 4 of your introverted functions are going to have a wider scope. Now, the ones that are unpreferred in your case, or they're non-preferred functions in your case. So if we look at your SI and then we look at your FI, those are going to have limited energy. Okay. So those functions, that because they're not preferred, are going to have limited energy. So you have to understand that no matter how much you develop those functions are pulling in a direction that you don't have the energy for and your psyche isn't wired for. you can become better at those functions. But if you compare somebody who prefers those functions, who has more energy, they're just going to last longer. It's like you playing football with a pro athlete who has played football their entire life. That pro athlete is obviously going to have the skills and the energy to keep it up. And whereas you may drain really quickly. So doing the cognitive function test online, they're ridiculous. And so that's really what it boils down to. And so it's like, hey, oh, you're 40% judger and you're partially this perceiver, you're 20% extroverted, you're 15% introverted. That's all completely outside of cognitive function theory. And that's more like the big five, if you ask me. It has nothing to do with cognitive function. So hopefully that cleared that question up for you. Benny, question, how does NLP connect to the subconscious? Connects TI, the INFJ, or INTJ? NLP is not it's not a noun. NLP is a verb. It's an action. It's a series of techniques as far as, well, if it's a series of techniques, it's a noun. It's a series of techniques. But what I mean by that is it's not something it's not a theory that connects to something. It's a tool you use to apply to the subconscious. So that's what it's about there. It's not really, it doesn't have a connection per se. It just is used to do something to your psyche. So if that makes sense, then we can move on from that question. I don't see any other questions here. So guys, I appreciate all you viewers coming on and watching our show. Like I said, hopefully today was full of information for you guys and had a lot of insight regarding, your own personal development. Hopefully we released some stuff to you guys to where you guys got some value out of today's show. If you really did, like I said, get on our Slack and get in the NLP forum. Let's get that forum booming. Let's really start talking about some serious techniques we can use to enhance each other's lives and obviously move forward in life. That's our goal here. Is we're all here on this planet. We're all sharing the same planet. Let's make it the best we possibly can, regardless of the circumstances we can't control. Let's detach so much negative meanings to our experiences and start attaching ones that make us more fulfilled, attach us to our core state, whether it's wholeness, fullness, belonging, family, friends, whatever it may be. Let's strive to do that. Let's strive to accomplish that. And, if you're watching this channel for the first time, I encourage you to subscribe. We're going to keep releasing content. We're going in the directions of NLP. We're going in the directions of, obviously dating and relationships we've had on this channel for a while, and we're always going to do MBTI stuff. That's really the root of what we do. But at the end of the day, it's about personal development and being an expert in yourself, right? So you taking an expert in yourself and realizing that you're going to be mastering yourself. And Blake's a great addition to our team because he's going to encourage a lot of personal development as far as, developing your own self in the sense of, hey, what steps do I need to take? What action steps? So very STJ way to approach life. Okay, which is going to be really, really helpful because Blake has went through his own experiences. He's been around a lot of intuitives. He's got a good perspective. So he's a great addition to the team because he's going to be helping you guys create action steps to move forward in life that are going to be applicable in your own lives, things that you can do to immediately advance. So I'm glad to have Blake on the team, and he's going to be a great addition thus far, and it's only going to get better as we move forward. So that being said, I appreciate you guys, and make sure you get on the Slack, and it's mbtv-chat.signup.team. That's where you go on again, and it's mbtv-chat.signup.team, and you can sign up there as soon as possible. We appreciate it, and thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next live show on Wednesday. Take care.